Bloodwolf Arts Studio. Unleash the artist within.
Welcome to Bloodwolf Arts Studio, and I'm your host, Mr. Moonlight. Today I'm talking about my next poem in my book series, and this one's titled Eternal Worth, and it was published on April 30th, 2011. So, a bit of the context surrounding this poem is a lot of things that was going on for me right then at that point that I was putting out in this poem was having to do with a lot of my thoughts on marriage. Because in the order, then marriage is a huge deal. It's one of the biggest, most important decisions and things you'll ever make. And there's a lot of that expressed in this. And the title, it says it all: eternal worth. There's nothing more valuable, nothing more precious. There's nothing more sacred and more worthwhile to be seeking after than finding a marriage partner. Now, in the DCCS, this also means marrying more than one person with polygamy. Um, but that's not really focused on and emphasized a lot with this poem. It's more, there's a bigger focus on just um, the search of finding the one, because also there's a lot of emphasis on there is one special person that you're supposed to marry, and they're already out there somewhere. It's predetermined, and it's not just a feeling with um, any kind of person. It's like, oh, this person makes me happy, that person makes me happy, I got to choose between the two. It's like, no, there's one very specific person that I get to marry. um, and there's a lot of focus on not making emotional ties, and that's talked a lot about in the poem, about not being distracted. There's a lot of emphasis on, I don't want to be distracted, I can't be distracted, I've got to focus, I've got to focus, because it's like it'll get in the way and then I won't marry the one. And that was something that I was hyper fixating on the time. Um, Being 19 years old in the order, it's like everybody's getting married at that point. At least that's how the culture is everybody's supposed to be getting married. And so there's a lot of like fear and panic of like, okay, I'm in my prime. It's time to get married. I got to be on time. For the women, it's a bit younger than that, but the big focus is getting married, getting married, getting married. Um, what if I mess up? I got to make sure I'm on the right path. There are so many people to choose from. How do I sort through all of these choices? There's so many choices. I don't want to pick the wrong one. I don't want to be distracted. I don't want to make emotional ties, but there's so many people out there that I got to choose from, and how am I supposed to know? And a lot of that comes out in here. And there's a big emphasis that this is something that's foreordained, basically before we come to earth. Then God already has someone in mind that we're supposed to marry, and so we gotta stick to that straight and narrow. You gotta hold to that. I guess LDS terminology, because we did study the Book of Mormon in the LDCC inside the DCCS, all conglomerated, known as the Order. Um, but the iron rod, holding on to the rod of truth, making sure staying on the straight and narrow, getting to eternal life, because that's the goal: is being married and being able to be together forever with the person I was supposed to marry, and know who it is from all these people, all these billions of possible people. And on top of finding the right person out of everybody, then there's still the emphasis on, it's like, well, even if you do find the one, then you can still lose the one by not staying connected to God, and um, not doing things right, not taking care of your partner, not being close enough to God, because that's also a big part of the fear is, I have to stay so close to God because my job as a man is to have that connection to God that she relies on. And so it's like, I've got to stay on this solid straight and narrow, because it's not just my success, it's everybody's success relies on me. And so there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of stress, and there's a lot of fears that come with that of fucking up. So that's the big emphasis on this one. Eternal worth is finding the partner who is more valuable and worth more than anything in my entire life. Obviously, except for my connection to God, but part of the culture is that your marriage partner is someone you're sealed to for time and all eternity. And so that's part of being to the higher degree of glory. And so a part of the teachings is, you can get so far by yourself, but if you don't have this marriage partner, then you can't get higher. So that's a big part of the focus, is on marrying the right person, because you're literally laying a foundation that makes so you can go higher and higher and higher and be more spiritual and get to the highest degree in heaven. Because once you marry your first marriage partner, then it builds the foundation for marrying multiple partners as a polygamist, and it just builds on each other. So there's just so much stress and so much pressure emphasized in this, which was a lot of the pressure I was feeling at the time. I remember there was so much anxiety and there was so much fear in making a mistake and just, not getting it right the first time. That pressure was just permeating everything I was doing. And that's a little bit more I'll go into, actually, is so there's so much fear and pressure about marrying the right person in the culture. I'll give you kind of an idea of what I was working with. Is there's so much pressure and so much fear about messing up that they have a system in the order that, and even today they won't acknowledge this, but it's an arranged marriage situation. And I think that they did it. They talk about it not being arranged because they say, well, God's directing it, so it's God's authority. So we're not arranging. It's just God guiding everything. Um, but it's so detailed that what they do is they have dance cards where you basically have a list of people you're supposed to dance with. That's the only purpose of the dances, is to socialize with women, to find your marriage partner, which adds a lot of stress and pressure to dance. It's like you're not there to just have fun, you're there to find your marriage partner, and there's so many social rules. You can only dance with a girl once unless you have special permission from the parents. There's so many hoops you got to there's so many hoops you have to jump through just to talk to a girl. Zero dating. There's no dating in this culture. None. I almost hesitate to say that because it's like there are very special cases, but it's like dating is not a part of the culture. But if like it's a very, very special case and you've jumped through all the hoops and all these permissions, or maybe you're married into the right family, then there's leeway given. Um, but the bulk of the pressure is you cannot date, period, until you are engaged to marry this person. And some people even get married days, hours, weeks of finding out who they're supposed to marry. Um, and so you have something called a dance card, where if you have any dreams or impressions or thoughts or feelings or whatever, that you might say, God is telling me to get acquainted with that person, they're one of my possible choices. So you're narrowing it down or playing some kind of part in their life. You put their name on a list, and they also, like the fathers and the leadership, they'll actually bring you, they'll actually set you aside and they'll show you a list of every single person. I don't know how this is for the women, but for the men, they sit you down with a list of every single girl, all the way down to toddlers, and saying, I have a feeling about that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, which is where there's so much dysfunction. And I'm just concerned about what's going to get flagged on this video, but there's pedophile culture. Essentially, it dips into pedophile territory, because you're grooming, you're looking at these girls and saying, God says I got to get associated with this family, that girl, and that's how detailed this gets of finding the right person. That's how much fear and anxiety there is of we've got to know who we're supposed to marry before they're like even born. Like it gets so detailed and it gets so down. And so you can only imagine the kind of pressure that's there, and that's a lot of the pressure I was dealing with. at the time, and who's the right one, who's the wrong one, and then there's a whole mixture of like, that aspect of the culture. It's like there's a very general feeling that outside of the order, then this is not okay. And I remember that very clearly in the order, or DCCS, that in the order it was okay to literally be looking at girls of whatever, didn't matter their age was, and being like, I might marry that person someday. But knowing that outside of the order, that was not the case, because it was obviously, it's like, yeah, you'll fucking go to prison, you go to jail, because that's pedophilia. And it's put up as, oh, the outside the order, they don't understand this. So but basically any girl inside this community is being preyed on all the time by everybody, life being planned out. These girls are literally just being targeted, um, underage marriages from the day they're born. There's already deciding who's going to marry them. And anyways, there's a lot there. There's a lot there to unpack if you're not familiar with the DCCS culture or the Kingston clan or the order. Um, but that's a lot of the context and background of this, of the pressure behind this poem, or the context that it was being written around. Is there are so many choices. How do I know? There's so many rules. Um, and I got to pick the right one. I have to pick the right one because I don't want to fuck up my eternity. And I want to, be able to go to the highest degree in heaven. And on top of all of that is, you know, there's so much dysfunction, and there's so many of these behaviors that are that are that are happening from all these pressures, but that's even um, intensified by the fact that also part of the DCCS is you are told from the day you're born that you are absolutely not to make any friendships or connections or ties or associations outside of the community, literally taught to be afraid of socializing with people outside the community, unless you have the right permissions, because there's so much fear of messing up. And even friendships, making the wrong friendships. It's like everything is so scrutinized, and that's just compounded on all of this. So you can just imagine how deep that goes. It's the isolation, and so all these fears and these things are just compounded, and there's no stop measures being put in place to govern anything except for other people who are giving each other the same passes to engage in the same sort of dysfunctional patterns and behaviors. So on top of all of this pressure of finding the one, it's intensified by a lot that by the isolation inside of this community. And so it's like, I've got to make this decision, but I've got to do it this certain way, and I can't tell people about it. And it's like, if anybody knows, then you're going to get in trouble, because they obviously, the community and the leadership obviously knows at some level that this kind of scrutiny and particularity and detail there's something about it that's just not okay. And so that amplifies all that. So there's a lot. There's a lot behind that. And that's one of the areas where, and I reflect back on this. This one was written 14. This one was written 14 years ago. And that's one of the areas where I reflect and be like, wow, that was a wild mindset and culture that I was a part of, that I grew up in. So be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I actually want to do my videos a bit longer, like this one, to go into a lot more of the culture and the context surrounding the poetry. That's one of the reasons why I chose this platform, is to use this for this part of my video series. And go ahead and follow me on Facebook, where I post the social updates and I just blast everything there when I post stuff. So if you're on Facebook, you can follow me on there, and also follow me on TikTok as Mr. Moonlight, and that's where I am doing the readings for the poetry for now. I think later I am going to do the poetry on YouTube, but they are going to be the same as what's on TikTok, except they are going to be on another level. That's something I'm brewing up right now. So they will be on YouTube, but not for now. So go ahead and follow me on TikTok as well to stay up to date on what I'm doing. And my books are available for purchase on Amazon.com. My collection of poetry, The Seasons of Life, Volume 1, Autumn, and Volume 2, Winter. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the other side.